More medications, less health. Something's broken. Traditional medicine manages symptoms, but true healing addresses root cause. I'm Josh Rimini, pharmacist turned healer. At Beyond the Pills, we merge ancient wisdom with modern-day science to inspire you through stories of transformation, practical trainings, and holistic healing. Join me and other practitioners as we guide you towards vibrant health, body, mind, and spirit, and move beyond symptom management into true healing. Hello. Welcome to this episode of Beyond the Pills, where we explore the intersections of ancient wisdom and modern-day science to unlock true healing, body, mind, and spirit. I'm Josh Rimini, pharmacist turned healer, and today we have a special guest in someone who has spent over 3 decades mastering the science and soul of self-empowerment. Ravinder Taylor is the president of Progressive Awareness Research and the co-author of over 200 personal motivation audio programs. She's a trained hypnotherapist, an ordained interdenominational minister, and holds a degree in microbiology from the University College of Wales. She's also the author of the powerful new book, Mind Training, The Science of Self-Empowerment, which we'll get into, which draws on more than 200 peer-reviewed studies to provide a practical and evidence-based self-help curriculum. Her work cuts through common self-help myths to reveal what really works and why we're more powerful than we think. Ravinder has appeared on national platforms like Coast to Coast AM and Today, and she joins us to share how we can break free from mental programming, harness the power of optimism, and truly reclaim control over our minds and our lives. Welcome to the show, Ravinder.
Thanks so much for having me on, Josh. I'm looking forward to a great conversation.
I loved our pre-connection call, like the things you've been doing and what you do, because I've been a student of mind over, health and controlling, like reclaiming, like all those things that have gone in that emotional healing that I've done. And so mind training, right? Mind training. This is a topic that I think is going to be a foundation for us to talk about today. But what is mind training and what does it mean to you to truly empower this and empower yourself?
In a nutshell, Josh, mind training is about tweaking formerly subconscious processes to eliminate self-destructive behaviors, enhance health and vitality, and supercharge success potential. The fact is, most of us think we are just the way that we are. We're the way that God made us or our genes made us. We're a product of our circumstances, and there isn't anything you can do about it. We are just who we are. And that is not the case. We have a whole lot more power than we think we have. When we learn how our minds work, then we have the ability to reverse engineer, I suppose, and to actually start creating our own lives as opposed to just being in the passenger seat of the car.
Well, I've been a student of that myself and teach people in different ways, because this podcast and what I do is all about transformation and healing. And how did you get into this work? You studied microbiology, but you're into the neuroscience of change, and you're talking about, reprogramming that subconscious space, which is 95% of our program, right? We're always programmed into what we can do. And so how did you get into all this work? I'm curious. What's your story, the backstory? We always love talking about people's backstories.
I do often think that, kids get shoehorned into different fields of education and then into careers. I think sometimes we make those choices too early. Looking back on it, I much I would have much rather have gone into psychology because I'm fascinated by that. But no, my family were typical Asian parents. They doctor, lawyer. I wasn't smart enough to go into medicine. So I ended up doing my degree in microbiology. I was working in a path lab. My approach was very science based. I mean, I thought that's all there was. I wasn't interested in woo woo stuff. The first time I encountered Reiki therapy, I cracked up laughing. I thought it was the funniest thing. It was that there was a mind body expo kind of thing. And there was this person that basically said, well, for £50, we can give you this energy. And for £75, we can tell you how to use this energy. And I thought it was funny. I thought it was hysterical. So that was kind of the background that I came from. But then I was working in the Path Lab, and one day there was a special presentation being hosted by the hospital that I was working at. And because it was being sponsored by the hospital, that gave it a kind of endorsement. And this presentation was on hypnotherapy. Now, I'd always thought hypnosis was something people did on stage. It was for entertainment. You tried to make people look stupid, have everyone have a laugh. But I learned a whole lot more in this presentation, a whole lot more. It was definitely valid because the subjects that he brought up to demonstrate the techniques on all happened to be from my lab. Now, this was a huge auditorium. People from my lab were spread out across the whole place. So it was just coincidental. But I knew for a fact that they weren't shills. But then he shared a story. And it was this one story that changed the trajectory of my entire life. And it was a story about a woman who had a pain in her arm. She'd had a pain in her arm a long while, a decade or more. I don't remember exactly. She had seen all the doctors, seen all the specialists, hadn't been able to find a solution to it. Under hypnosis, they went back to what the triggering event was, and she remembered a traumatic event. It was an emotional event of some kind. She had dismissed it. It was in the past. We all have traumas in our past. We all have things that have upset us, but she went back to this specific event. After the hypnosis session, the following day, she called the hypnotherapist up and said the pain had gone. The pain had actually gone immediately, but she hadn't believed it. So she had waited for the following day to call him. And I was really intrigued by how something in the past could have such obvious effects on our present day experience. I was fascinated by the process. I underwent hypnotherapy myself, learned some really cool techniques like hypnotic drawing, hypnotic writing. Because I found that fascinating, I went on and did a 3-year course in hypnosis and psychotherapy. And that was where I met my husband because he was doing a special presentation at the hypnotherapy school I was going to. So then I learned about subliminal communication, pre-conscious processing. And from there, obviously I got married, but I then spent the last 35 plus years researching how the mind works, how we learn, why we do the things that we do. My approach is very science based, but my real interest lies in the practical applications. How can we use this to become better people? How can we use this to improve the quality of our lives, have better relationships? It's very much the practical usage of the science that gets my attention.
Yeah, well, it resonates because a lot of what I've done in my journey of my professional and personal journey, I've always been drawn to the science and understanding the mechanisms. So I'm a pharmacist by trade, right? But then I learned the wellness mechanisms, and then I started learning about the neuroscience and then the energy medicine side that I'm just starting to be certified and learn is kind of my newer space where it is more of the woo side, but then there's this intersection with the science, right? Like you talked about. I love this story because every time I pull this out with people, it's like, how did you get to do the thing you do? And it becomes the story for them of like, I went to this thing and out of like, there was no, I don't think there's a coincidence that all the people in your lab were the participants, because then you were the one, that's what you needed to validate that process, which intrigued you, which leaned you in, which got you to be certified in that modality, which then leads you into the next thing, which then leads you into meeting your husband. It was like the breadcrumbs just fell because it became in an alignment, because that's how I feel some of this always works. So I just love the stories that people create of like their backstory. So thank you for that. And thank you for the constant reminder that things are working in our favor, even though we don't know it. And then um, the story of your client, or this client, right? Where she didn't remember it, or she had passed it through, like it wasn't emotionally affecting her, but there was this pain that had been trapped there for so long from the emotional tension and trauma from that had created a physical component. So we're talking mind body here, right? And then through hypnosis, through this going past out into the subconscious, right? And then talking through it and then releasing that out automatically helped the physical ailment. And I think that's where I think a lot of what we've talked about on these podcasts and where people are sensing and feeling is like there's the energetics, right? The energetics of it is the body's trapped there, but as soon as we reprogram, right? This was a therapy tool that was being used to do something that physical medicine probably would have never picked up, right? It was just like, oh, we're going to go to the shoulder, we're going to go to the orthopedic, we're going to get an MRI. And this is where I think a lot of us get these patients from. I've gone to the doctor, they've done all the tests, nobody knows what's wrong with me, but something's wrong with me, right? And so I love that. And there's not one size fits all. This was just one way that what happened to it. So have you how do you work with someone in the like the hypnotherapy space? Because is there this is just more curiosity for me. Is there some people that are easier to be hypnotized and move through this process? Or is there some people that, because I've always talked to people like, oh, I can't get hypnotized. It's not me. Like they kind of talk like that. So I'm curious from your clinical perspective and the science behind hypnotherapy and moving into the subconscious. This is just one way, right? Um, what's your experience with that? Because I'm kind of a curious more for me than anything.
Everyone can be hypnotized. The fact is, hypnosis is just that more pronounced slowing down of brainwave activity, more open to suggestibility. And they've actually done research looking at people watching television and how quickly they can get into a hypnotic state. That's one of the reasons why advertisements on TV can be so dangerous, so impactful. So you have a commercial that is talking about XY drug and it's going to take all your problems away. And when you're in that zoned out state on the sofa watching TV, well, then you just take it in. A big one for me, and this is one that I actually experienced myself, is to do with allergy season. Today with streaming the way it is, it's a lot easier to avoid commercials. But back then it was impossible. Um, so yeah, I'm watching TV and every spring they would talk about allergy season coming and you need this drug and that drug. Um, and I remember there was one period, I don't tend to have allergies. I don't tend to have hay fever. But there was this one year where all of a sudden I did. I was sneezing and snuffling. This story is actually more interesting because there's different aspects to it. So I see this commercial that talks about the hay fever. I start experiencing it, and I experience it to quite an extreme. It was interfering with intimacy. It's really impossible to be intimate with your partner when you have to stop and blow your nose every 30 seconds. It doesn't quite work. So I think for me that the symptom was triggered by seeing the commercial, but it took me a while to get through this particular one. I started looking at what the possible causes could be. Um, I take self responsibility to quite an extreme. Now, I'm going to there's a caution here. I'm not saying that everyone who is sick is doing it to themselves. That's not it at all. When I look at self responsibility, I do it very, very personally. I'm doing it to myself. And when you ask yourself the question, why am I doing this to myself? It opens up avenues. It doesn't matter what area that you're looking at. If you say that I am part of it, so why am I creating it? As opposed to this is somebody else's fault. So is it my genes fault that I have hay fever this year? I've never had it before, but when you put the blame somewhere else, there isn't anything you can really do except treat symptoms. But when you say, why am I creating it? Then it does open up avenues. And for me, in this instance, it took me a while. I actually ended up we've got a program called End Self-Destructive Patterns. We've got lots of programs. My husband is the creator. He's Eldon Taylor. He's the creator of the Inner Talk subliminal self-help programs. They're the only ones on the market that have been researched by independent universities and institutions and been demonstrated effective at priming how you speak to yourself. It just coincidentally through this, I had put on the End Self-Destructive Patterns for myself, and I had a dream. Now, I'd been having this problem for about 9 months, but I had this dream where I was poisoning myself. And when I woke up the following day, I knew exactly what it was. Sometimes the answers just pop out to you. And I knew it was because I was in a bit of a catch-22 situation. There was some circumstances going on. So this was the strategy my subconscious mind was using to try to extricate myself from the situation I was in. It was a damned if you do and damned if you don't kind of situation. As soon as I saw it, as soon as I realized it, it went away. So I had been dealing with this nonstop sneezing, snuffly stuff for 9 months. And as soon as the correct answer appeared, it disappeared. And we often find this with self-destructive behaviors. The subconscious mind isn't trying to punish you. It's not trying to create obstacles in your life so that you always have bad relationships or you always catch colds when nobody else does. It's not trying to do that to hurt you. It's doing that to try and protect you from a repeat hurt. So, maybe the woman who had a pain in her arm, she just her subconscious mind thought she needed the reminder not to get into that traumatic event again. Unfortunately, the subconscious mind almost always uses old information. It's out of date information. It's not relevant to today, but it is still just trying to protect you and creating self-sabotaging behaviors in the process.
I think that's a great place to. There's so many questions I have in that because one, it's like it's not. There is those protective mechanisms, right? And they are outdated because, and sometimes they're maladapted, right? Because it was from your childhood or some other place, and then all of a sudden it keeps showing up. And I love how you're connecting that subconscious, the programs to protect us. Some call it ego too, right? And then it's like, but then how they manifest, but then also how they become so quick to resolve once we bring awareness to them from a conscious level and a subconscious level. So is that kind of how you work with somebody? Is like to uncover these things, or do you work with them to get them to realize what's going on underneath there, you know?
There's two kind of approaches that I use, Josh. You can look backwards and try to find the cause of an issue. one of the things that I have found is typically you can have one initial event that plants the seed for a problem, but then there can be lots of events that reinforce that as you go along. So
Yeah.
when I do hypnotherapy, I can do the regression. So you say you take a particular problem, you put someone under hypnosis, and you say, okay, I'm going to count you back in time, 1 year at a time. And then you have an ideomotor response where you lift a finger. You ask the patient to lift a finger. Was there something in that year that triggered this particular issue that you're having? And what you find is that there can be lots of these triggers. So you can go back one by one to uncover them all. And at each uncovering, the problem can diminish. So that's one way to do it. And again, you don't have to use hypnosis for that kind of process. In my book, Mind Training, one of the things that I cover in there are the 8 stages of development that Erickson put forward. And what he says is that at different phases of your life, you're supposed to learn different strategies, different ways to approach life. So, for one example, they did some research looking at infants from from birth to 1.5 years of age. And they assessed their degree of bonding with their primary caregivers, their parents or whoever. And they were able to predict, based on the degree of bonding that the infant had, as to how many friends they would have in high school or what kind of personal relationships they would have. So you don't have to use hypnosis to go back and look at these things. One of the things I found is the more you question your subconscious mind, the more you truly believe that the answers lay there, the more the subconscious mind will give you the answers that you need. So having the framework of the 8 stages of development gave me the ability to look back and say, oh, that's where my fear of public speaking came from. You see, you can look at all that. So you can look backwards in that way. You can use hypnosis. You can just question your subconscious mind. For me, having these 8 stages of development gave a good framework, a good place to look at what I'm supposed to learn at these ages and where I have issues. But frequently the problems that we can have, they're based on old information. They're not relevant now. So you can just look forwards. One of the things that we have learned is that lots of our choices today, they're not conscious choices. The choices come from our subconscious mind. So you look at the work of Benjamin Libet, John Dylan Hayes. What they did was using electrodes or um, fMRI, they would look at the brain when someone's making a choice. And these choices were really simple. It may be something as simple as, am I going to press the button with my right hand or my left hand? Really simple. But what they found was there's activity in the subconscious mind up to 7 seconds before the person says that they have made the choice. So these choices are not being made consciously, they're being made in the subconscious mind. And we've intaken the subconscious mind is a repository of all of our experiences.
Right.
All of that stuff gets stored in the subconscious mind. It has a bias towards negativity. Anything that hurt us and anything that upset us gets stored there. And then when you're making choices today, you're reaching, it's the subconscious mind that is giving you the answers. So what you can do is try to change the programming in the subconscious mind. And that is what the Inner Talk subliminal programs do so well. Because it's presented subliminally, your defense mechanisms aren't in place. So you take something like an affirmation that says, I am good. People often talk about affirmations. Affirmations can be great, but you tell yourself something good, I am good. And to me, immediately, I get back the self talk that says, what does good mean? Good at what? hang on, I'm not really, I mean, how do you grade being a good person? I was kind of short with my partner today. Um, I didn't stop and give that homeless person some money today. What does good mean? What? So you argue back with it. With the inner talk subliminal programs, it bypasses that process totally. So these affirmations go directly into your subconscious mind and change the programming there. So when I'm looking forwards, I'm saying, okay, you take a particular situation. Maybe you're trying to lose weight. Maybe you believe that you always get into bad relationships. Maybe you think you just have a self-destructive personality. So what is the kind of self-talk? Your self-talk is a mirror on all the beliefs that are stored in the subconscious mind. How can you change it automatically? And that is what the inner talk subliminal programs do. So I will look both ways. You can look backwards at a problem, or you can say, okay, how can I fix it right now? You can use affirmations. You can use a correctly created subliminal self help program just to inundate the subconscious mind with beliefs that are positive, that actually support your goals.
I like that. It's a fascinating space of like, how do you, when I hear you talking about these inner talk subliminal things, it's like, how do you get in there, right? How do you get in that protective field? Like that's gonna already talk you out before you even thought about it, or in that space. How when you work in that realm with people, obviously we got to find out, like, I would like to know where people can go learn for that, and we'll teach people where those tools are and where they can go find them later on. But like, talk me through that process of working with someone on that capacity. Is it something that they can learn and then they use to do on their own, or is it in a clinic setting where you're kind of talking back and forth? I'm sure people are trying to think about like for me, the logical guy in me just wants to think about, well, like, okay, what's the mechanism of that process? Like, if you're working with someone like that, is it a period of months? Is it a period of years? Like, how does it look?
I am not practicing hypnotherapy today.
I like
I
the inner
do
talk
talk
stuff
to,
too.
yeah, I do talk to clients all the time. Frequently, people will come to us and they can say something like, I want to be successful. So, where I will guide them is like, okay, well, what does success mean to you? Is that success in business? Is that success in relationships? Is that success in your fitness goals? What does success mean to you? And I will hone them into that. People generally, the problem that I see most commonly is they've got these big goals. They want everything all at once. They want to be successful in all of these different areas. And I tell them to focus. Focus on what will help you be happier today. Because isn't that what all self-help and personal development is? It's about creating more happiness. Earning more money isn't just about having a bigger bank account. It's about what you can do with that money.
Right.
Because you can buy things that can make you happier, or you can help out your children when they need money, or you can take care of your parents. But the root of all of this, the root of all personal development, is about being happier. So I will ask people, what is it that will make you feel happier today? Forget about these big goals. You can't achieve everything all in one go. But what happens is when you hone it in, become very specific, think about just today, take steps to make yourself happier today, and you'll find it has a rippling effect across all of these other areas. Lots of these other problems will simply disappear by themselves. And so that reduces the amount of work that you need to do. So the most important part, I think, when I'm talking to people is trying to hone in to what it is that they want. Then I question them about where they think the problem started. I had one woman come to me. She had used our inner talk program for weight loss and was not getting the results that she wanted. So I was talking to her and I was asking her, well, where do you think it started? What happened in your past? Where did this, w- at what point did weight begin to become an issue? What else was going on in your life? In that conversation, she said, actually, I was abused as a child. So perhaps that's what I need to look at. And she did. She ended up getting our Survivors of Abuse program. People who have experienced abuse, they often internalize all of this information. They say, I must have done something wrong. That's why I'm being abused. Or I'm not really a good person. That's why I was being abused. They take it all personally. You need to change that kind of thinking. So this particular client did use our Survivors of Abuse program. She called me back a week or so afterwards, said that she had some kind of breakthrough. She felt some kind of release. She went and started using the weight loss program, and now everything was working fine. She was really happy. So her her initial goal was just to lose weight. The technique didn't work for her, so she had to dig a little deeper. And then she found that it was, the self-talk that she had that was related to the abuse that she experienced. The Inner Talk program changed that kind of self-talk. And then she could go on to the positive things about weight loss and the affirmations that say things like, I like eating fruit. So we often can hear from people using the program that say they'll go to the fridge to get a piece of chocolate cake. They'll either close the fridge realizing they're not hungry anyway, it's just a habit, or they decide that the apple looks tastier, so they will get that instead. It's changing that self-talk going forward.
In your work, that's a big process, right?
Actually, Inner Talk is just one of the tools that I outline in mind training. It is only one. It's a significant part of the work my husband and I do. It can be the quickest way to deal with all of this, but the whole process can be a whole lot bigger. It depends how much you want to do. If you want to fix one problem right now, yeah, go for find the correct Inner Talk program. That will be fine. But mind training goes through the entire process. It goes through how we learn behaviors, how we can how things can push us around so that we're like puppets with somebody else pulling the strings. Um, there's lots of ways, there's lots of work done in marketing in particular where they look at compliance principles and reciprocity and how they can get people to buy a particular product or how they can get them to behave in a certain way. So I mean, I discovered that there's loads of research in this area, Josh. There's just lots and lots of it. You don't have to learn all of that, but understanding that these things do go on. So I discovered that if you go to a restaurant and the waitress is wearing red, she will receive more tips. And it doesn't matter if it's from a male customer or a female customer. A waitress in red will just receive more tips. There's research like this going on everywhere. And who do you think is using this research the most? It's going to be the advertisers, the marketers, the politicians. Why not take this information and use it ourselves? So I have a whole chapter that talks about these principles, and the idea isn't that you have to know them all and understand them all, but it's having the general awareness that this stuff exists. So then when you're watching a politician or you're seeing an advertisement on TV, you can have that skeptical hat, hat on, so to speak. You take a step back, and to use Kahneman's word, you can employ more system two thinking. That's a concept, but it's more of the careful thinking as opposed to the automatic reactions that come from your subconscious mind. You can pay attention to all of that. There is also the amount of research that has been done on optimism and positivity and how the kinds of benefits that you get from that. It's incredible, Josh. Looking at the longitudinal nurses study that was done, they had the nurses keep journals. And what they found was the most optimistic women would have like a 16% reduced risk of dying from cancer, a 38% reduced risk of dying from heart disease, a 52% reduced risk of dying from an infection from being optimistic. The work that interested me in particular was research out of Johns Hopkins, where they looked at the effect of positivity in heart disease. And they found even in families with a history of heart disease, and my family does have a history of heart disease, you can see that time and time again. Um, what they found was that with a positive outlook, you are a third less likely of experiencing heart disease, even with a family history of it. So then you start looking at, well, how do we cultivate positivity? I'm not talking about toxic positivity. I'm not talking about the person that pretends to be positive all the time. In fact, they did discover that those people who were hyper positive could actually end up creating cancer. And what they thought it was due to was, they were pretending so much that it was really an act of denial. They were just covering it. It wasn't real. It wasn't inside. It was just very surface level. The other problem with toxic positivity is that it can reduce your empathy to other people. When somebody else is in pain, you want to be there and support them, having the connection with other people. If you're overly positive, it can turn that empathy off, which isn't good for you, and it's not good for the people around you. So my training looks at all of these different areas, and it looks at techniques for creating habits, normal habits. The process is not a case of, well, every day I've got to spend half an hour meditating and I've got to do X amount of exercise and I have to do, it's not like it's time intensive. What I do in mind training is look at all of these different areas and then provide ways that you can implement them really easily. The longest exercise I have in mind training is just a 12-minute meditation. That's the longest one. The rest of them, it's all a case of habituating what you do. So you wake up in the morning, you feel cranky. It happens. Biology does that to you. Perhaps it's because you ate too much sugar the prior day. So you have the sugar high, sugar low in your sleep, you wake up in the morning, your body is not feeling optimal, and you interpret that as being depressed. But there are things that you can do. So for me, if I wake up cranky, I'm going to do some diaphragmatic breathing. I'm going to incorporate the Duchenne smile. These things don't take any time. I can do it as I'm walking down the stairs in the morning. So you incorporate those things. If I'm feeling really blue, I will try to step outdoors and get some sunshine, because that will turn on serotonin in the brain. That's going to make me happier. If it's a cloudy day, a rainy day, maybe I've got my light therapy lamps and I will turn those on. But there are lots of little things that you can do to turn it around. And yeah, so it's a whole process. Sorry, that was a very long answer, but it goes well beyond just the inner talk subliminal programs. They are one tool. I look at the entire spectrum and try to give the reader all the tools they need to personalize the information, to take on board the aspects that work better for them. We're all different.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, I think that's what's important for people to know is like it's what resonates with you. It's like, how do you move to here? It's like, well, if that's about it, I've talked about this recently. Is like, but there's a balance between consistency and trying new things, right? It's like, well, you can't try it once either and expect it to work. So there's this balancing where, like, hey, try it for a little while. If it doesn't work, go to the next thing. And they stack on each other too. So these things can be done. And I'm glad, I love that you have these tools for people that are either no cost or low cost, like the things you just talked about. Like you buy a bulb, right? You buy a lamp. It's not that big of a deal. Or you smile, or you have a certain way of thinking. And these are things we can do. This is part of the lifestyle medicine education we can give ourselves is, instead of going to the the advertised drug that costs $1,500 a month to barely do something, and it's like, no, you can actually do things to empower yourself. So now that we've talked a lot about the book Mind Training, like where can people go find that resource?
The book you can purchase anywhere books are sold, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, your local bookstore. If they don't have it, they can order it in. So the book title is Mind Training: The Science of Self-Empowerment. It's very much about personal empowerment. You can learn more about me going to my website. That's ravindertaylor.com. But what I would like even more is if you can friend me on Instagram or Facebook, because I love interactions. I love hearing about people's experiences when they try out these tools and tools and techniques. It's getting feedback from people that use these tools and techniques that gives me the ability to refine them and try to make them even more uh, significant.
That's great. And it's also a reminder that we learn from our peers, right? When somebody posts something that says, "Hey, this was really impactful," or "This really worked," it's not a testimonial per se. It's really about, this is from my experience, is like people learn through experiences, through other people's experiences, and it gives them hope and it gives them encouragement. So I'm glad that you're on the side of encouraging people to give you feedback, because does how we learn and refine our stuff, but it's also how people can be motivated to do it, right? And so I think that's amazing. So ravindertaylor.com, you've got your book, you can go anywhere to get that. Those are such cool things. I'm really going to be start diving into the subliminal programs and offering them. And I know there's some controversy around those kind of programs. Like, why is the science so misunderstood here?
Oh, there's money interest, Josh. I actually, in the appendix of Mind Training, I go through the story of subliminal communication and why it is so misunderstood. I will tell you
Good.
one thing. Um, if you go out to Snopes, you know, in this day of misinformation, I will frequently go to Snopes to find out the truth behind a story. And if you go and look at subliminal and popcorn advertising, I think you'll go to the page and it will tell you categorically that subliminals don't work. But one of the examples they used to say that was because this all came from some research that was done in a New Jersey theater. It was the eat popcorn, drink Coca-Cola subliminal ad that came out. And there was lots of controversy. I said, I go through the full story. But one of the examples Snopes gives is that after the initial research was done in the New Jersey theater, the head of the Psychological Institute did a replication and it failed. This particular head died 5 years before. So it was absolutely impossible for him to have done that replication. But on the internet, information gets spread and repeated. So I have come across that same information written by profs, you know, highly respectable universities. They're just repeating the same information that is incorrect. And we have learned that a lie repeated often enough becomes a truth. But then you also think about the amount of money behind it. The whole thing became super controversial after the Judas Priest trial. This was in the 90s, and Judas Priest, there was a court case. They said that it was subliminal messages in their music that had caused two young men to try to commit suicide. One was successful, the other was not, but he ended up dying 3 years later from his injuries. I'm not passing judgment on the court case at all, but you get to see the amount of misinformation. But one of the things they did, you would have seen in all the papers at the time, they hyped up a research paper that demonstrated that subliminal self-help programs don't work. It was everywhere, Josh. But your background is in science. You understand the basics of science. The fact is, you don't need to have a scientific degree. In school, we are taught for any scientific study, you control the variables. You have to have the exact same conditions in order to say that something is a replication. You can't change stuff. In this particular scientific paper, it was really flawed. And I take that apart. But one of the things they did was they took self-help programs off the shelf from a store. They used 3 different programs and they researched that. Now, Josh, there isn't a strict definition to what subliminal is. So you've got 3 different companies producing programs. You don't know what the technology is behind them. If one of them had worked, it would be buried by the other 2 not working. There were just factors like that that just kept on coming through in this paper. There's even some definitions out there where they say that, see, to me, it's subliminal if you don't report hearing it. It's not to say that you don't hear it occasionally. It's about it being in the background so far that you're not aware. It's not saying that you can hear a violinist playing the other end of town. That is not what subliminal is. It has to be in the correct range. But some of these profs who were going on about subliminal doesn't work, they were using definitions that said, no, if you're guessing correctly what the answer is, then you have perceived it. So therefore, it's not subliminal, which is ridiculous. Absolutely
Well, it's
ridiculous. Now, they played
yeah.
games, but there has been meta studies done, meta analysis done, where they look at 100, 200 different research studies, and today it is hard and fast. Subliminal communication does work. It does have an influence. It has an influence on your emotions. One of the research studies I came across after this was where they where the subjects listened to 10 seconds of the subliminal information. Now, to me, that's akin to saying caffeine is a stimulant. Therefore, I'm going to give you 1 drop of coffee on your tongue, and then I'm going to measure your blood pressure to see if there was a difference. That's dumb. That is dumb. But
Well, it's
that is why it was so misunderstood, because there was a concerted effort to make it so that advertisers could carry on using it, basically.
Well, it's just the whole adage, which is the truth of the matter is especially when you're in this field of science, is you can always tailor your studies around your outcome that you want, right? This is what pharma's done, and why they wash out the placebo effect, because they don't want people to know that 30% of people can get better off nothing, right? It's just so you and I both agree and nurture the placebo effect in people. So
Absolutely.
it's just another reminder though that, like, I love what you said though, is like, if if something if you said it like in the way I heard it was like, if you speak something that's not truth so much, it becomes a truth, right? It becomes normalized, and then it becomes where if you say it long enough, people start to believe it, and then it becomes true. And so I'm glad that you brought that up. I think there's always going to be controversy, especially around things that are cures or healing, where someone doesn't have control of the outcome, right? Like some other being, some other organization, whether it's big pharma, big food, they're the ones that tend to drum up some of the controversy when you good people like you or I are trying to teach people how to, you know, empower themselves and to be in the driver's seat of their own health and healing and transformation. And so thank you for bringing that to light and to debunking the things because of, for me it's mixing the science with the theory, with also the what you've seen in your own practice or you've seen in your own experience, because those are valid parts, right? This is why you want people to share on social and not just go straight to the study. It's like, well, if that's working for you, that's great. Like, let's just nurture the fact that it's working for you. We don't need to really know why. We know why, but we don't really need to validate the why. We just know it works. If it works, it works. Like sometimes that's good enough for me. If somebody takes a supplement, they get good results from it. Allergies is a great one, right? I just gave someone my the supplement that I helped formulate years ago, and it's really good and it works natural. And he's like, I didn't believe you, but can this thing work this fast? Like it's really helping me. And I was suffering. And I said, yeah, it can. And it's like, look at that. Like you just tried it. It worked. And I think if people read your book and they just try a couple of these things and it helps them, well, that gets the ball rolling, right? That's the next step. So that's amazing. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for reminding me of that. Let me as we're winding down here, this has been really helpful. I can't wait to grab a copy of your book and start reading in it. I love this kind of stuff. I have one more question for you before we kind of wrap up here, but like you're also an ordained minister. And I just did a recording with someone the other day and the same thing. And they're all science oriented, but you're an ordained minister. And so how do you see spirituality fitting into a science-based self-help model?
To me, spirituality is a huge part of my life, Josh. I can read science papers and I can find spirituality within them. Sapolsky has got in his book Determined. I don't know if you've read that. It's a great book. He goes through all the arguments against free will. Some of the greatest minds in the world will tell you categorically free will doesn't exist. But in Sapolsky's book, he's an atheist. But I think he gave this one particular story. He's talking about neurons in a petri dish, if I remember correctly. And when it was just flat in the petri dish, they just wandered around randomly. As soon as they made it three-dimensional, increased the depth, then they started to come together to form structures. And to me, that was spirituality in action. That was God in action. So I'm always finding elements to it. In mind training, I talk about awe. I talk about meditation. I talk about faith. You bring faith into it. That's going to make it so much stronger, so much more powerful. Then I have this section on free will. You've said a couple of times now about everyone should go out and talk about the positive benefits they've had using these different tools and techniques. But when we talk about free will, I think everyone, say, let's make it a very specific example. Everyone listening to your podcast is interested in this information. If they take on board the information and it changes their lives, then the people around them who think that the stuff is all hocus pocus, they're going to see the before and after in that person. So therefore, that becomes part of their experience. See, free will, these scientists that say free will doesn't exist will pin that on your genes, your life circumstances. Everything has a precursor event. But you can be a precursor event in somebody else's life, not by teaching them, not by lecturing them, not by hammering your ideas, but by being the change that you want to see. So you improve your life. Others will see that you become an experience in their life. And then they say, well, maybe I shouldn't dismiss it so easily.
Mhm.
Maybe I should try that myself. So therein lies to me the deepest spirituality in mind training. Actually, it's about self-empowerment. It's about the connection we have with each other and the kind of influence that we can have on others' lives. It's how we make the world a better place.
I think that's such beautifully said. Thank you so much, because that is the big tap capital T truth for me, and I've had that firsthand experience of, and I've led that life of like, be the change you want to see in the world rather than teach. I spent a lot of time teaching, and my wife calls me the professor, right? He just wants to teach, teach, teach. And it took my own journey of transformation to then just, there's a knowing in there. Like, people will come up to me and they're like, "You look different. You have this feel about you. There's something there. What's going on?" And then it's like, then you can speak to the experience and the story. It's not the opposite. It's like, "Oh, you need to do this and this and this." It's part of that journey. And yes, if you help, this is why I love people like you that are doing great good things in the world, because we're here to help. If we help ourselves, then that can help other people. And when we help other people through our own journeys and our own experiences, then the world becomes a better place automatically, right? We talked about it earlier, and this is part of things that's coming into my field lately, is the ripple effect, right? This is how we get scalability in the human empowerment world, and in getting people moving. So as we close up, Ravinder, thank you so much for this. What's one, if the listeners could do just one thing out of this conversation today, what do you think that would be? You could get them to do one thing, what would it be? Or want to know one thing, what would it be?
That you have control over your own life. You are more powerful than you think you are. Your brain is incredibly powerful. The placebo effect is one of the best examples of our ability to heal ourselves. Why not learn techniques to enhance those natural abilities that we have? You are not a victim of your circumstances. You can create change at any point in your life. You have that within you. Learn the techniques, put them in practice, and then allow that ripple effect to go out in the world.
Thank you so much. That was so awesome. I love nurturing the placebo effect. It's the best drug in the world, right? It's the cheapest and the most effective, and the one that causes no harm. So thank you for that reminder, Ravinda. This has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for all you're doing. Go find that book, Mind Training: The Science of Self Empowerment. You can find it on her website. Go Instagram and Facebook. um, Thank you so much. This was been such a treat, such a pleasure, and thank you for all you're doing in the world.
Thanks, Josh, and thank you for the work you're doing. It's invaluable.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Well received. That's a wrap. Until next time, stay well. Thanks for joining me today on Beyond the Pills. If our mission to deprescribe 10 million unnecessary medications resonates with you, share this episode, subscribe, and leave a review. Whether you're a practitioner or someone ready to reclaim your health, visit rx2wellness.com for free resources to begin your journey. Together, let's go beyond the pills and co-create a world of vibrant health and true healing. Until next time, live better and stay well.